Hey everyone, welcome back to another video where we'll be talking about more games based on TV and movie franchises. There's quite a selection to go through, 8 in total. So let's not delay any longer and take a look at the first game based on a TV show. This one's based on a very unique reality show that I've never watched before, probably never will, but the game's on the big green, so we gotta give it a look. I'm of course talking about American Chopper. So the story behind this reality show game goes like this. You play as a new hire at the famous bike shop where you must complete missions for Paul Sr. and the family in order to build a bike for the big races. And that's it. You don't get much else except some horribly paced cutscenes that don't do much except to show how the stars of the show were there for a check, and that's pretty much it. They try to make it feel like an episode of the show, complete with narration, but it just feels so slapdash together that you won't give a damn anyway. As for gameplay, you partake in a handful of missions where you race around the city and outskirts, such as races, delivering bikes, stopping thieves, and poker runs, where you drive around stopping at checkpoints to collect a card, trying to get the best hand. These are stupid. That's all I got. Now, this type of gameplay isn't terrible per se, but controlling your bike is a horrendous nightmare as just gently moving the left stick or D-pad causes you to violently turn and lose control. Plus, the AI isn't the smartest bunch as they love to ram into other vehicles all the time. On top of that, you have a gas meter, as well as a time limit, which makes absolutely no sense. Granted, you can collect gas icons to refuel and wrench icons to repair your bike, but you move so fast through the stages that you probably won't grab them anyway. There's also cops to avoid, but that's incredibly easy, so I don't even know why they're in the game. As for presentation, I'll cut to the chase. The visuals are bad. The blur effect that's used doesn't help at all, and the maps and characters look more like slightly up-res PS1 models. Meanwhile, the music is pretty much all licensed rock at the time, and the voice acting, well,
this bike got to be delivered to Albany today. I don't have the time to deliver it, and I don't want you wandering off. So send the new guy.
American Chopper,
Who's this?
the new guy.
This is Mayhem of Mayhem's Motorcycle Emporium. I got your engine, but I want to get out of here, so come over now.
He did his job. That's what he gets paid for.
bottom line, American Chopper is not a good game, even for fans of the show. It's a sloppy rush tie-in that was made to get a quick buck and shouldn't be played. I've got nothing else to say on this one. But of course, being a cash grab, it apparently made enough money to warrant a sequel the following year. American Chopper 2, Full Throttle. Full Throttle cuts out all of that storyline business and instead lets you choose one of the 4 family members that run the shop, each having their own set of missions to complete, like racing and collecting items across the map. That will net you rewards depending on how well you do. This ranges from new bikes and parts to fabrication points that you spend to make new parts. This is all utilized in the garage where you build your own custom bike to use in the game, which is a really nice feature as it makes you feel like you're part of the show. What makes this an even more pleasant experience is that the gameplay is actually a little more improved than the first go-round. Bikes control much smoother and getting around the map is easier now that the fuel gauge is gone. The AI is still an idiot, but you take what you can get. Unfortunately, like the first game, there's not much else to Full Throttle besides those missions. It feels like the developers created an awesome bike customization system and forgot to develop a fuller game to it. At least the game looks better with the stages and the characters, though there's still some slowdown when you hit the turbo. As for audio, the music is still rock-based and still forgettable, while the cast of the show doesn't say much this time around, and thankfully it's for the better. I wish I had more to say about Full Throttle, but at the end of it, it's still a cash grab for fans of the show. Though it's a better one. If you really had to pick an American Chopper game to play, go with this one. Otherwise, go for a more filled out bike racing experience. So the American Chopper games went from bad to so-so, but we're not quite done with garages yet. So let's switch the tone from working on bikes to working on crazy vehicle concoctions with Monster Garage. Based on the popular show at the time, the premise of Monster Garage is to take a regular vehicle and modify it into a crazy beast of a machine with outrageous results. In the game, you have 7 challenges to undertake, transforming the target car into a monster vehicle. To do this, you and your team, including host Jesse James, have 1 in-game week and a budget to order the parts you need, create the special parts used on the task, put it together, and then drive it in the arena to perform a task suited to the vehicle's new ability, unlocking the next challenge to play until you're done. The gameplay basically boils down to this: buy the parts and wait for them to be delivered, order a crew member to work on a special part, remove and add parts as needed, either automatically, which takes time from your week, or manually, which is played out as a simple minigame. Then finish up the job and drive. Along with all this, you have to make sure to pick the best crewmate for the job since it takes time to make such parts. There's even times where some crew will either get in a fight and leave or not show up to work at all for a while, which can hamper your schedule. If you're not able to finish the task in time, it's game over. Try again. At first glance, this looks to be a PC game, as the UI and movement feels like a mouse would have been better suited here, even more so when the big green version has less features than the PC original. From what I read, the PC version allows you to try multiple ideas on cars, where the Xbox version only has one way to go, which can get boring pretty fast. I can't lie though, as I continued to play through the game, I found myself enjoying it a little. Granted, I enjoy simulator games as it is, so maybe it scratched that curiosity, but either way, this isn't that bad a game. Yeah, driving your creations isn't that fun, but nothing's perfect. I mentioned how the visuals are very PC-like, with mostly menus and images, but the cars themselves don't look too bad, and the arena is serviceable. As for audio, there's not much voice work, and what's here is laughably bad, while the music does the job. I have to say though, I've never watched Monster Garage, but the theme they use here gets pretty annoying when you hear it on a loop.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
Is Monster Garage a good game? Well, it's not a bad one, but not something I can just easily recommend. Fans of the show will probably enjoy it, and fans of simulator games can get a fun afternoon out of it. It didn't make me want to go watch the show, but I can easily say this is a garage worth visiting at least once. So that's 3 games published by Activision based on 2 shows from the Discovery Channel. Needless to say, I think we got our fill from that, so let's switch it over to a game that's published by Codemasters, and technically I'm kind of bending the rules here, as it's not based on a TV show, but it's got the name of a TV network in it. But I couldn't really fit this anywhere else, so I figured, what the hell, I'll talk about it here. I'm of course talking about MTV Music Generator 3. This is the remix. Okay, so this might be the shortest review I've done. MTV Music Generator 3 is not a game. Instead, it is a music creation tool that allows budding music makers to create their own songs with a selection of sounds and loops, as well as being able to remix a few songs performed by popular artists at the time, hence the "This is the Remix" subtitle. If you've ever used music creation tools on PC, you kinda get how to use this one, though Generator 3 is much more simplified for console use, with easy-to-use controls and tutorials to get you going. The sounds used are of your club, dance, and techno variety, which are great if that's your jam. The visualizations are nice. I mean, what you see is what you get. The only thing I can say about this is it was a cheaper alternative to buying PC mixer software at the time, but now it's more of a curio than anything else. I did make a song using this.
I keep the heat on deck, but in God we trust and can't.
Not very good though. See, I told you that'd be a short review, but at least we're done with the TV. So let's switch it over to the movie side of things, with our first game being based on a 2003 remake of a 1960s movie about car chases and stealing stuff with Mini Coopers involved. I'm of course talking about The Italian Job. Just like the film, the story of The Italian Job follows Charlie Croker and his crew of thieves planning to get back the load of gold bullion that they had grabbed during a job. but was betrayed by their partner Steve Frizzelli, resulting in the death of Charlie's mentor and the one who put the heist together, John Bridger. In the game, you do this by playing a set of missions in story mode. These vary from getting point to point to obtain needed items, tailing cars, and returning to your base while avoiding cops, to name a few. This is decent enough, but there isn't much variety to the mission, meaning you'll be playing the same type with a different MacGuffin in place. Plus, it doesn't help that some missions can be finished in a few minutes. There's also regular lap racing as well as time trial and stunt race modes to partake in, but those can get boring fast. And just like any movie-based tie-in, playing through the game unlocks bonuses like movie stills and storyboards. One thing I can say though is that the game plays fine and has very responsive controls. There truly is something good here, it just feels incomplete and rushed. As far as how it looks, the Italian job does a decent job of emulating Los Angeles, since that's where the game mostly takes place. I did see a few recognizable buildings like the Comedy Store, but even then, it does feel like driving through a city of painted cardboard boxes. At least the cars look better though. For audio, no one from the movie reprises their roles. In fact, you only hear two voices the whole time. A police officer and Croker, originally played by Mark Wahlberg in the film, now portrayed by Quentin Flynn for the game. Flynn does an alright job, but it kind of feels like Raiden from Metal Gear Solid is just narrating the whole time, and it's kind of weird.
It all began with a meeting. John Bridger was gone, but he had a daughter, Stella. She was as good as he was, and a lot better looking. I called her. Though she blamed me for her father's death, she agreed to meet me. It was going to be a tough sell.
The entire job wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Instead, I found it to be a serviceable but overall mediocre racer that could have been much more if it didn't have to be tied to a release date. If you're a fan of the movie, give it a try, if you see it for cheap. Otherwise, there's better racers on the big green. So we've been behind the wheel, or handlebars, of vehicles for most of this video now, so let's get out of the car and instead talk about a movie-based game that has the distinct honor of having one of the longest names ever for a video game. Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie. And no, I will not be saying that every single time I mention the title. If you've seen Peter Jackson's 2005 epic remake of The Eighth Wonder of the World, then you already know what's going on. But here's a short version. A filmmaker named Carl Denham takes his cast and crew to the mysterious Skull Island to shoot a picture when they discover the giant ape known as Kong and must escape back to their boat, but not before saving the main actress Ann Darrow, and Carl taking Kong back to New York since a giant ape is a bit more profitable than a movie. The game pretty much follows the plot, but with a few video gamey padded missions to make it more action-packed. The gameplay of PJ's KKTOGOTM, yeah, let's just say King Kong, is split into two styles. For our main hero, Jack, his levels are done in first person, where you must survive the deadly creatures of Skull Island by any means. You'll come across a few guns, like a pistol, shotgun, Tommy gun, and sniper rifle, but these have very limited ammo and must be used sparingly. You'll also have access to spears all over the island that can be used as a melee weapon, but are more effective when thrown. These spears can also be lit on fire and used to burn spiked bushes that prevent your progress. To immerse the player in more realism, the HUD is turned off by default with no ammo counter or aiming crosshair, so you have to aim precisely as well as press a button to have Jack say out loud how many bullets he has left. You can also turn this stuff back on, like I did, if you don't care about realism and just want to play a video game. Throughout the adventure, you'll actually get to play as the Eighth Wonder himself. Kong's levels are more about platforming and beating the other giant creatures of the island to a pulp in order to protect Anne. There's not much to his stages, and they end pretty quickly. To be honest, I wanted to play as Kong more, but since they're trying to make the game as close to the film as possible, I understand. Unfortunately, just like those who felt the film was a bit too long, the game kind of feels the same way. Though I think it's due to the levels being chopped up into small sections complete with long loading times. Also, this game can be tough, with enemies taking you out with 1 to 3 hits as Jack and a few more as Kong. You really have to use the laws of the jungle here to survive, such as using other creatures as bait to lure the bigger ones away, letting you sneak by and preserve ammo. I also have to give credit to the human NPCs being more useful than in most games here. Well, maybe not always. There's also a few bonus things to unlock by completing the game and earning points for replaying levels again. These range from the typical stills from the movie and the game, trailers and whatnot, but the best unlock is an alternative ending, where at first it plays like the last scene of the movie. But instead of Beauty killing the Beast, you get to play as Jack in a biplane, taking out the lights and planes so that Kong can escape back to Skull Island and actually live. Truly the ending we all wanted for the big guy. For presentation, Kong is a game that you can tell was squeezing out the most of the Big Green's power, considering that this game was a launch title for the newly released Xbox 360. It does look as good as it possibly can, though. The jungle varies from bright and green to dark and foreboding for the caves. As for enemies and characters, the creatures look decent enough, but the humans are kind of a mixed bag. They've got that facial recognition down enough, but the rest is struggling. Plus, there's a ton of slowdown in some sections that have a lot going on, but then zooms back to 60 frames when it's quiet, as well as numerous bugs and even game-breaking glitches. Whether it was Ubisoft struggling to make this game run as best as it could on what was hardware that was heading out the door, or they just didn't give a damn and was focused more on the 360 version, this port can be hard to play. At least with audio, that stayed intact with a wonderful orchestral score that sounds like it's right from the film, even though it's composed just for the game. As for the voice acting, the cast from the film all reprise their roles here, adding to the realism. The only one that seems to get a little too much into the role is Jack Black as Carl Denham. In the film, he is crazy with excitement over the discovery of the island and Kong wanting to finish his picture, but it's played in a more serious tone. Here it sounds like he wants to break out into a Tenacious D song at any moment. It's a bit jarring.
Aeon, this is the perfect place to shoot. This is exactly why you shoot on location. Authenticity, Jack. Real life. Ow, man. Is it broken?
No, I think you'll be okay.
Not me, I was talking about the camera.
I don't know about the camera. I only know how to fix up people.
Jack!
Carl, thank God. You got away from him.
Get those ropes. My God, did you see that? They were chanting the name Kong. Kong!
I know, I saw it. Carl, it took Anne.
What? Yeah, I know. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. It's gigantic.
King Kong is one of the better movie tie-in games out there and is a fun time for an afternoon, especially if you're a fan of the film. But I strongly advise going for another port of the game as the Xbox version feels half-baked. Either the Xbox 360 version, the PC port with some modifications done to it, or even the GameCube version, which I'd played before and remembered it working fine. I can't speak for the PS2 version, so that one I leave to the brave. It's a shame that Ubisoft doesn't make games with this much detail to them anymore, as this was a fine example of making a game based on a movie. It may not be the king, but it is a wonder to play. Now let's turn it from Peter Jackson to one of his more recent filmmaking partners in crime, Steven Spielberg. Of course, Mr. Spielberg has had plenty of games based on movies he's directed, and, well, here's another one. So let's talk about the Tom Cruise starring Minority Report, well, at least the game adaptation. Like the film, Minority Report puts you in the shoes of John Anderton, a captain of the Pre-Crime Division, a police squad who uses a special method of clairvoyant humans named precogs, who use their visions to find out crimes before they're committed and arrest the ones who will commit said crimes. When it's discovered that a precog has a vision of John murdering someone, he must discover why this will come to pass, all while running from his former department. The film itself is a pretty good story and exciting to watch, and the game, for the most part, follows the same beats, with a few things changed here and there for reasons I'm not sure of. I mean, the game came out months after the movie did, so your guess is as good as mine. Heading into the gameplay, Minority Report is your standard third-person beat-em-up with shooting thrown in, where you must make it to the end of each stage, beating up enemies and some slight platforming along the way, complete with a jetpack, because you can't have the future without a jetpack. You have a small variety of guns to use, but due to ammo being slightly limited, you'll rely more on melee. There's a few combos you can purchase with the money pickups you obtain, but you'll mostly just mash the A and X buttons over and over to win. Besides combos, you can also buy upgrades, both permanent and temporary, as well as some health and ammo, with said cash during the stages. And trust me, you're going to need all the help you can get because this game is stupid hard. Enemies can take you out with just a few hits, and if that's not enough, sometimes you'll just die for no reason at all. It also doesn't help that with the melee, the commands have a bit of a delay to them, meaning the combos don't connect as fast as they should, which is a shame because the controls are actually kind of precise. What makes this even more fantastic is that there's no checkpoints at all, so if you die, it's back to the start of the level. I figured this is because some stages are so fast to beat that checkpoints would be pointless, but still, this is insane. My guess is that the developers were told by the publishers to make this as hard as possible for anyone renting it so they'd keep shelling money out to beat it. I'm sure I'm wrong about that, but damn if it doesn't feel that way. Funny enough, there's a term I like to use for games like Minority Report, and that's cheat game. Games that are actually more enjoyable if you use codes. Not necessarily codes like God Mode or Infinite Ammo, but ones that can make the experience a little less cheap. Well, Treyarch must have agreed because they loaded this game with tons of codes that make the game go from either slightly forgiving, a bit of a breeze, or just plain odd. It kind of reminds me of Blood Rain and how the codes for that game weren't all 100% just invincibility, but more to make the game a little less difficult. Trust me, you'll need some of these if you want to actually see this game to end without breaking your controller. Visually, Minority Report looks decent for an early Big Green release. This did come out when Xbox was barely a year old. Character models look like up-res 5th gen, but they do have the most wacky animations, due to the heavy ragdoll physics in the game. You also may notice that Tom Cruise is looking a little, blonde. They couldn't get his likeness or voice, so instead Clancy Brown takes the reins of playing Anderton, and his performance is pretty good. Meanwhile, the rest of the cast varies from good to good for a laugh in both looks and voice.
It seems there are some flaws in the system after all. Maybe if you weren't so insistent on your one-man antics and had brought some back—
Listen, you little snot. It's much easier to predict and control a tactical situation like this if you limit the variables. You'd know that if you ever spent a day in the field.
Just remember, if you were the weak link in this chain, you will be replaced.
Save it for your report.
As for music, there's not much there, but what is there is standard techno beats which, fit the game's look. On the surface, Minority Report looks to be a decent tie-in, and it is, but the insane difficulty and cheap AI hold it back. It can be fun to play through, just use a few of those codes and don't feel bad about it. And now we've come to the final game of this episode, and it's funny that I mentioned Blood Rain because those same developers actually made this game. So let's finish off strong with the 2005 game adaptation of the movie based on an MTV animation classic, Aeon Flux. Or is it Aeon? 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 That show. So the story of Aeon Flux the game is closer to the plot of the show than the film, though it tries to blend both storylines from the show and movie. In the sort of distant future, long after the majority's Earth population has been wiped out from disease, only one city stands tall, the walled-away Bregna, ruled by those who made the vaccine for the virus. Aeon, the top operative in the resistance to overthrow the government, is tasked to take out their most influential leader, Trevor Goodchild. However, Aeon will learn that not everything is as it seems, causing her to think twice about what's at stake. It's interesting the route that the game takes with its inspirations, but as someone who saw the movie and thought it was a thing, the game's take on it isn't too shabby. Flux is a third-person action game, kinda like Blood Rain, where the goal is to make your way through each stage, completing the objectives laid out for you, with the usual killing and platforming along the way. Aeon's arsenal may be small, but there's plenty to get you through. You only have her handgun as an available weapon, but it can be loaded with 4 types of ammo. Meanwhile, melee boils down to a light and heavy attack with some combos to use. The hand-to-hand isn't as strong as shooting, but there's a bigger reason to use it more often with the handy finisher moves that can either throw your enemy, place a bomb on them attacking others, or refilling your health in special meters. Platforming is similar to the Prince of Persia series, though on a much simpler scale. Thankfully, Miss Flux's moves are easy to perform due in part to smooth controls. Aeon will automatically jump from one section to the next, and hopping poles and ledges is a snap. There is also grapple sections where you can swing down or up, shooting enemies along the way, although the camera can be a little awkward in these spots. Lastly, there's some turret sections and parts where you control an orb to hack objects and a ball vehicle to get past certain sections. And of course, there's plenty of bonus things to find, like intel for the game's world, as well as extra material for the film and bonus costumes to wear. If there's anything that would be a mark against this game, it'd be how it can be a bit difficult in parts, but more of an AI going overboard on the damage kind. Granted, there are checkpoints, but they can sometimes be far and few between, and with some parts of the level being quite big, there's a fair chance you'll be replaying those huge parts a few times. But, just like Blood Rain, Terminal Reality threw in their code system that allows you to either get a little help or just flat out cheese the game away. Visually, Aeon Flux is a bit all over the place. The stages themselves are quite nice, from neon Blade Runner inspired cityscapes to alien-like temples and more. Meanwhile, the character designs lead more into the show's look, while Aeon herself is designed after Charlize Theron, who played her in the movie. This is made apparent with the intro movie that starts with footage from the animated show, then goes into CG cutscenes of Charlize Theron. It's not the worst character visuals you'll see, but it's just weird, especially with Flux looking like she's ready to fall asleep, as well as having her standing next to Trevor Goodchild that looks more like his animated look than the movie version. Which brings me to the voiceover work. While the cast of familiar vocal actors do a great job here bringing the characters to life, Miss Theron reprises her role here, and there's a hint of just give me the damn check already in her performance.
Okay, these devices, we've seen primitive versions of them before. These are definite upgrades. They're called custodians, a mind control device designed for mass production.
By Goodchild Industries, our beloved chairman and his idiot brother.
Sure, who else is that power hungry? I reversed the control units.
Okay, I get it. Find the scientists who know something, slap these on them, and pull the whole sorted scheme out of them.
Yes, just walk up to the scientists and implant them. Here's your FUG.
As for music, it's okay, nothing amazing. The best phrase I can use to describe Aeon Flux's only game is kind of forgettable. There's better action games on the big green, and given the history of trying to get this IP into the world of video games, this was as good as it was going to get. If you're a fan of the show, but not the movie, and can deal with its influence here, you'll have a decent weekend game to play. Otherwise, just go play Blood Rain instead. And there we go, 8 games down. Whew, what an undertaking. As far as the TV games go, the American Chopper games were what I expected. Cheap, cash-in games just for fans of the show, and I don't even think fans of the show liked them that much. Monster Garage kind of surprised me. I actually had fun with it despite its simplicity. I think I'd play it again, personally. MTV Music Generator, it's not really a game, you just make music, that's it. As far as movies go, out of all of them, I'd say King Kong is the best one, followed by maybe Aeon Flux, then Minority Report and Italian Job at the very bottom, only because that game just feels like it wasn't fully finished. So, but even though that's the end of this episode, don't worry, there are still quite a few licensed games to go. If you count, movies, TV shows, even the kids stuff, there's plenty to go around, so there'll be more of these collection episodes. But until then, as always, this is the Dali Popka, and stay green, my friends. I'll see you next time. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode and want more of me and the Big Green, then click that subscribe button and the bell to get notified when new content arrives. I want to say a special thank you to my patrons for helping not just the channel grow, but me as a creator. You have my forever thanks. If you're interested in the channel and would like to help it grow further, consider becoming a patron today. For the cost of a soda or an item on the dollar menu, you can help myself and the channel provide the best source of Big Green programming and more. Once again, all the thanks and love.